Okay, here I am going to read the next couple of chapters from Jack's story. Just check that this volume is working okay. Oh yeah, it's quite echoey, isn't it? Is this better? What about that? Is that better? It seems to be quite echoey. Yeah, that seems to be a little bit better. Okay. Okay, I made it echo less. Very good. Now I've made it a bit quiet. All right. Well, are you all sitting comfortably? Let us begin. Chapter 35. Whoops. I knew that I wasn't ready. Sorry. Okay. Now let us begin. Go, guard. We ought to do something, Dan said to Jack, as the two boys left the room together. Not much we can do, Jack said. We don't even know why the headmaster's stuff is being vandalized. Well, there's only one way to find out, Dan said. We need to set up our own surveillance in his garden here tonight. Don't be crazy. He'd never agree to that. Dan looked at Jack. No, Jack said. No and no. Well, if you're too chicken... I'm not chicken, Jack said. It's just wrong. The two boys parted on bad terms, but it was obvious to Jack that Dan must have realized how foolish his plan was. Jack arrived home just as Rose was leaving. Didn't I tell you, darling? She called out as she was about to step into Palmer Conway's red Mercedes. We're off to dinner in Nelspruit. Find yourself some supper in the fridge. There's bound to be something there. She blew him a kiss and disappeared to the sound of the car engine accelerating. Some hours later found Jack tossing and turning in bed. Sleep eluded him. It was a still dark night. Midnight passed, and then the next hour dragged by. Far away, but coming nearer, he heard the scream of tires on the road, and two bright headlights illuminated the night sky. Jack's eyes, heavy with sleep, opened as the window creaked and a giant shadow was thrown on the wall next to his bed. He opened his mouth to yell when someone hissed in his ear, "Don't say a word, Summerfield." It was Dan. "It's only me." Jack heard the car stop in the road outside, and Palmer Conway's voice broke the silence as he bade Rose good night. Jack heard the car doors slam and Rose's high heels tapping on the wooden floor of the hall and then up the stairs. Jack's door opened slowly and Rose peeped in at him. He feigned sleep, and she tiptoed out. Dan, meanwhile, had pressed himself against the wall behind the curtain, trying not to breathe. They heard the door of Rose's room open, and after a short time her light went out. Soon silence descended once more. Jack let out a deep breath. He rounded on Dan, his voice savage. "What on earth are you playing at?" he asked in a furious whisper. "I've been at the headmaster's house," Dan said. "There are people in the yard. You have to come and see." "You're crazy. Anyway, they'll be long gone by now. Dan, I've told you." "You have to come with me," Dan said. "Just get dressed and come. Trust me, I'll wait outside. Hurry, get your bike." Jack stared at Dan's retreating back as he climbed out the window, and then he heard his footsteps as he slid and staggered on the tiles and made his way down the roof onto the tree at the side of the house, and from there to the ground. After pulling on a black t-shirt and long pants, Jack joined Dan, and the two set off on their bicycles. As they approached the headmaster's house, which was situated in the far corner of the school grounds, Jack saw a red Mercedes parked in a driveway of one of the houses over the road. His feelings of unease about Palmer Conway threatened to overcome him. "There's definitely something going on here tonight," Dan breathed. Jack strained to hear his words. "Leave your bike hidden here in these bushes. Follow me. This is how the vandals are getting into the schoolyard. Be very quiet." Dan moved towards the high hedge that ran down the roadside of the school property, then stopped suddenly as he heard a branch cracking, followed by some muttered swearing. Both boys froze against the hedge as a large shape pushed through the gap, not 3 meters from where they stood. The shape resolved itself into a rather chunky man who walked across the road with a curious rolling gait. Once more, Jack felt his innards twist in terror as the man spoke in that distinctive gravelly voice that he had last heard that fateful night in the cellar. "It's done, boss," came the sibilant whisper. "He's had the final warning. He'll know we mean business." "Good work. Get along then." The chunky man rolled down the path towards the donga, and the car eased out onto the road and sped off. "Who the hell's that?" whispered Jack. "I think he's one of Palmer Conway's drivers," Dan said. "My dad was telling me that Conway has a whole fleet of trucks that take goods into Swaziland and back." The boys felt weak with relief, hardly able to believe they had escaped notice. Dan led the way to a very narrow, almost invisible gap between the hedge and the wall, and they wriggled through into Mynheer de Villiers' yard with difficulty. "What's the problem?" Jack asked. "Nothing looks out of place here." "Be careful," said Dan, his voice a whisper on Jack's ear. "There were several of the gang here earlier. We'd better make sure they've gone." "There's no one here now," Jack said. "He was doing something in the garage with some other men in his gang. I swear it," Dan said. He led the way round the side of the garage and motioned Jack into the shadows. They froze as they saw someone apparently attempting to break into the garage through the narrow window on the side wall. "Go round the other side and we'll catch him between us," Dan said. The boys rushed the intruder, one on each side, and wrestled him to the ground. "Ah, you idiots! What do you think you're doing?" their captive said in an affronted tone. And as Dan flashed his torch, they saw Zachary lying on the ground. "What are you doing here?" Dan asked, reaching down and pulling Zachary up. "We came to see if anything was really happening here, and then we had to hide because there were a whole lot of bad guys up to no good. They were doing something in the garage, so now that they've all gone, we came to investigate. Innocent is in the garage already." "Move away so I can open the garage door. You don't want to see this," came Innocent's voice. "You don't want to see this," came Innocent's voice, and with that the garage door started to open slowly. As the 3 boys peered into the darkness, their horrified eyes met a shocking sight. Hanging from a beam inside the garage were ropes attached to Mynheer de Villiers' 3 dogs, who were trussed up, nooses round their necks, muzzles taped. The poor creatures were wriggling mightily. Propped against the car was a huge piece of cardboard on which was written in red paint, "Stop interfering or you'll die like your dogs." The dogs were standing inside the garage. As the door rolled open, their paws left the ground, and they would have been strangled if Dan and Zachary and Jack had not rushed to lift them. Dan and Zachary pulled out their knives and sawed at the rope, restraining the dogs, and finally freed them. "Leave the tape on their muzzles," Jack said. "They're all very traumatized and couldn't be responsible for what they might do. I think we should all get out of this place as quickly as we can. I'll go ring the headmaster's doorbell, and hopefully he can take it from here. I don't think we should be caught right now." "I agree," Dan said. "Too much explaining, and who knows what people will believe." The boys dispersed. Jack narrowly escaped detection, but he did manage to arouse the headmaster, who investigated what had happened to his dogs and immediately called the police. Jack was on tenterhooks, expecting hourly to be called by someone, the police, the headmaster, someone, to give an account of what had taken place. Nothing happened. He couldn't believe there were no repercussions. Surely they'd not got off scot-free. In the end, he visited his grandfather and shared the whole story. "You must tell the police," Jack's grandfather advised. "Go and speak to Detective Markham. You have information that's potentially important. He'll laugh and tell me I'm imagining things. I'll tell you what, I'll come with you." The next morning saw Jack and his grandfather at the police station. Detective Markham could see them. They sat in his spacious office, and Jack poured out his account of what had transpired in the headmaster's backyard. Detective Markham listened attentively to Jack, and he made copious notes. They left, feeling reassured that Jack had done the right thing. Chapter 36. Figuring It Out. Jack, Kate, Adam and Dan sat together in the prefect's common room in an otherwise empty room. They huddled together conspiratorially. "Now that we know that Palmer Conway and his gook gravel voice are out to get the headmaster, we have to be on the alert," Jack said. "It's in the hands of the police. They will take care of it," Dan said. Kate frowned and kicked her leg back and forth. "It's frustrating, this wait-and-see game we seem to be playing. I wish we could do something." "I'm glad you're planning a way for us to get hold of each other in case of an emergency, Adam," Kate said. "Yes, me too. How's that contact chart coming on?" asked Jack. "All I ever do is record addresses and phone numbers and try to match them up," Adam said. "Sometimes I wish I had never had my grand idea and I want to give it up. Then I think, I have spent so much time on it already, I can't give up." "What are you doing about the prefects who don't have phones?" Kate asked. "Well, Zachary and I have developed a complicated system involving red rags tied to the fence. Different positions mean different messages." He saw Dan open his mouth to ask for clarification. "Don't ask," he said. "All you need to know is though everybody grumbled when we tried it out, I was quite pleased with the results." Adam had endured a lot of teasing from the other prefects as he handed them lists of names and phone numbers and strict instructions on how to use the information. but he felt vindicated that his system had worked well. I'm going to pin a chart up on the notice board here in the common room, he said. There's something I want to know, Dan said. Who is going to initiate the chart? Fine if it's Koos, but what if Nick, whose name is on the bottom, calls Koos out because he's realized there's a danger? Is that allowed? I was also thinking about that, Adam said, and yes, I think so. We just have to trust that everybody to take it seriously and not fool around. As long as everyone uses the correct password, Kate said. Which is? She looked around expectantly, a funny lopsided grin in evidence. Go, go, guard! They chorused, then fell about laughing. Do you think we'll ever need to use it for real? Jack asked. Who could say? Adam said. Sometimes I think we're all crazy. Sometimes I ask myself, what if? Let's go over what we know, Jack said. Kate opened the discussion. Well, we know there's been a lot of unusual gold and drug smuggling going on in Barberton of late. All fingers seem to be pointing at Palmer Conway, but there is no proof. My father has a theory. He thinks that when there was that huge drug bust in Joburg earlier this year, the cartels moved down here, thinking that no one would suspect them. Why Barberton? Adam asked. Yes, why sleepy old off-the-beaten-track Barberton? Dan asked. It just doesn't make sense. Jack stirred. Hey, I've had a thought. Think geographically. What if it's not Barberton itself? What if Barberton is just a conduit from Johannesburg through Swaziland? And we all know who sends trucks into Swaziland every week, Kate said. And into Mozambique, which has a sea coast and access to Europe. That may well be. Adam's admiration for Jack's insight showed in his voice. So that sort of suggests that it's quite a big deal. And possibly international, Kate agreed, which is an idea my father's been playing with. Dan said, if I was a drug dealer, I wouldn't have only one way of getting money. Using the cableway was a pretty risky operation. They must have known they would be caught sooner or later. Everyone was quiet as they took in Dan's words. Though what I can't understand, he continued, is how everyone involved escaped. Obviously an inside job, Adam said, laughing. Gosh, I've wanted to say those words for forever, and I never thought that I'd get an opportunity. No, wait a moment, Jack said. I agree. There is a possibility it was an inside job. But who on the inside? All the police are people that we've known forever. That's true, Dan said, but that doesn't mean they're innocent. Hold on, Kate spoke slowly. What about Detective Markham? He's new in Barberton, and he has a particularly unpleasant daughter called Cynthia, who goes to school at Nelspruit. She's one of the girls who ganged up on me at our last hockey match. The boys laughed at her. Markham's a hero, Dan said. You're not making sense, Kate. Adam had been turning a few ideas over in his head. If your dad is right, Kate, and it is an international operation, I can't believe their only way of getting money was by some little smuggling setup using standard six boys. Are you saying that's a smoke screen? Jack was incredulous. Sort of. I'm wondering what other ways the smugglers might get gold. Funny you should say that. Dan looked at Adam. It seemed as if something had suddenly clicked into place for him. My dad and his motorbiking friends often go into Swaziland to fool around on their bikes. Now and again they take some of us kids. I go whenever he lets me. What a mission! Do you have to take your passport and go through the border post every time? Kate asked. We don't ever go through a border post, Dan told her. There are hundreds of ways to get into Swaziland from Barberton. We just follow the cattle paths. Most of the time, we don't even know if we're in Swaziland or in Mpumalanga. Anyhow, this is what I'm trying to say. Often we see solitary walkers, usually armed with AK-47s, wandering along. They lift their hands and we wave, and that's that. They've never worried us. My dad says they are illegal miners. My question is, where are they going and who do they sell the gold to? There are no mines here, so how can there be illegal miners? Kate asked. Adam looked at her pityingly. Don't you listen to anything Mr. Porter tells us in geography? About the mineral-rich nature of the Barberton Greenstone Belt? There's lots of gold in them hills, he said, and the friends laughed. It's not only gold, lots of other minerals too. Jack gasped. He had a flashback to one evening at the cellar. He'd been aware on one level that the profile of the gambling den was changing from a schoolboy hangout to something more sophisticated and adult, but he hadn't really taken it in, despite receiving a hint or two from Timothy. Jack had dropped in unexpectedly, and Timothy had rounded on him and dragged him into the shadows. "What the hell are you doing here?" Timothy had hissed at him. "I told you never to come on Tuesday nights. Now get the hell out of here before someone sees you. Go on, man, just bugger off." Timothy had emphasized his words by shoving Jack to the entrance, panic in his voice. Jack left, but curiosity got the better of him, and he lingered in the dark. Just then, two burly men arrived, and, almost as if he couldn't help himself, Jack followed them inside. Looking around the room, he surveyed the people there. It reinforced his earlier feeling that the gambling population had changed. There were more men, older, sinister men, lurking in the dark corners of the room, their cheekbones thrown into relief by the flickering lamplight. In 3 different locations, men sat with scales in front of them and notebooks in hand, weighing and calculating. But what it was, Jack could not see. He took Timothy's advice and backed out of the room and made his way home. What exactly had he been witness to that night, he wondered now. Could he have seen illicit gamblers come to sell their ill-gotten gains? Some other detail was scratching at the corners of his consciousness. Suddenly, he realized he had recognized his mother's friend, Palmer Conway, at one of the tables. Jack shivered. The bell rang. Jack came back to the present with a thump. "Back to class," said Kate. All right. Phew. Well, it's getting exciting. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you again tomorrow. I'm nearly finished now. I'm thinking about what's the next story I'm going to read. Okay, bye.